Now, over the last couple of days leading to weeks, the MPP quite clearly started this agenda, which you and I know has collapsed on them. Not only on the strength of what the GJA said this evening, but also the evidence on the ground about the 15 names that they released, etc. But this afternoon, we are getting a new dimension. Joy FM says that they have new evidence to support the fact that government is attempting to bribe journalists. And that evidence is the voice of Baba Jamal that they played. Dr. Omane Boamah, that voice and what Baba Jamal said as it relates to the working conduct of staff of the ISD, does that, if you even decide to stretch the meaning or import of that statement in any way suggest that government is bribing journalists?
Thank you very much, Stan. I think that it is obvious the editorial discretion to refer to that tape as new evidence or fresh evidence was not exercised discreetly. I must say so. Because you see, if they are referring to it as new evidence, what that suggests is that there is an old evidence. If they are referring to it as fresh evidence, what that suggests is that there is obviously something which is credible, proud to coming up with that particular one. And for me, it is unbecoming that a station that at least we have all invested in one way or the other, not as a worker, not as I put in money in, but sometimes we all give pieces of advice we're here and there, not just now that we are in government, but even whilst we're in opposition and all that. I participated in their programs and all that. We would just advise that when they have these things, they should just exercise their professionalism in a much better way. Otherwise, the perception out there is that they are becoming an extension of this whole MPP propaganda to pay government, to paint government in a way that government must not be presented. But you see, the larger thing has to do with the MPP itself. In terms of taking political advantage, I must say that I'm very, very happy that the MPP doesn't seem to appreciate why the vast majority of Ghanaians voted them out of office. And when I say this, one, because of the fact that they have not done a serious analysis of why they lost the election. They keep on referring to the fact that the 2008 elections were close. It is very clear that key polling stations in the Ashanti region had overbloated number of people turning out to vote. Some recorded as much as 136% voter turnouts. They also seem to think that it is because some people tagged their presidential candidate, Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, as somebody who has meddled in matters of hard drugs, that contributed monumentally to their defeat. I must say that if that is anything to go by, then the first person that they should blame should be Nanado's own cousin, the director of the Dankwa Institute, Mr. Gabi Asaroche. Again, they try to blame the NDC for all these drug issues that have engulfed their candidate, Nana Akufo-Addo. In the first place, it was not the NDC that thought honorable, or permit my saying, dishonorable Eric Amwatin how to traffic heroin to the United States of America. So if any Ghanaian had the perception that the MPP, at least at one of the most responsible positions, could have a member of parliament peddling in that kind of illicit trade, how do you turn around to blame the NDC? My next point has to do with, during the 2017 men plus one presidential race that they held, most of the text messages that went around as a result of their own internal struggle for the position of the flag bearership of their party, we had some key text messages that pointed at the fact that Nana Addo is engulfed in some of these things. They can say that, well, these text messages were not coming from those people, but it is difficult for me to believe that it was the NDC that were pushing these text messages. Even to the extent that I remember that time I was living at Mames Inn in Dansoman. The day of the Congress, in the morning, some of the people who were dancing and heading towards Legon wearing the T-shirts, instead of talking about Yenimu Fritete, were rather mutating the slogan Yenimu Fritete and saying that, permit my saying once again, Yenimu Fritete. You understand? How do you turn around and blame the NDC for this? The last example I will give has to do with what Nana Akufo-Addo's own cousin wrote in his article, which has the heading "Getting High on Lies and Insults." The majority of Ghanaians below the age of 50 have been exposed to reuse one way or the other. Even if Nana Akufo-Addo,
or I'm not above that age.
Yeah, who grew up in the flower liberal age of the funky 60s in both England and Ghana, had experimented with grass like many students do. What in modern PR tactics informed the NDC that they could win by tagging the man who carries the tag Yenimu Fritete as a dangerous, hopeless, reckless drug abuser. Finally, they got a response with Akufo-Addo's lawyers denying he uses any illicit drug, quote and unquote. Let me say that it was not the NDC that generated these things. Recently, I have also heard one of the key senior journalists talking about the fact that even in 1995 or thereabout, Nana Akufo-Addo was tagged by the then NDC as having engaged in drugs. If that is the case, I think that in tracing history, if we are interested in tracing history, we must be much more interested in tracing it to the bottom. We have lived in this country where people have even tried to push the agenda that the former president, President Rawlings, had engaged in all kinds of things, even to the point of sometimes the late Nathan Kwao having to come in to intervene and all that. All these kinds of rumors were pushed through the system. The fact of the matter is that the MPP should stop blaming the NDC for this tag that their presidential candidate seem to have gotten. The NDC cannot be blamed for it. But just on this, look, my brother Felosofosu Kwachi yesterday referred to something which I think was classic, that all these polls that they are running around, Sinovate, Research International, DI, and all that, the best is the poll that will be on December 7, 2012. But before that, there is another poll that we can rely on. This has to do with the by-election that took place in Etiwa. You recall that at that time, Nana Akufo-Addo had just emerged as their presidential candidate. With a lot of momentum, they claimed to have energized their base and all that. In that particular by-election, on the NDC side, President Rawlings did not go to Etiwa to campaign. President Mills did not go to Etiwa to campaign. Key people within our party never went to Etiwa to campaign. Nana Akufo-Addo was in Etiwa to campaign. I have just done some work on the Akropong zone, where their candidate came from. And if you compare the figures for 2008 and the by-election result, and I'll just cite just three, you see the drop that the MPP experienced. This is how their fortunes are dwindling. They know it. I say they know it because if you read Arthur Kennedy's book, when even Professor Larry Gibson had informed them that the 2008 general election was going to be won by Professor Mills, and he was going to give it to him by a whisker, they still went ahead, put up a brave and strong face to deceive Ghanaians that Agbena, they had won the election. Just I look at Tumfa Presby JSS. In 2008, the MPP had 309. In 2010 by-election, 241. They lost 68 votes. You go to Tumfa Daycare. In 2008, they had 375. In the 2010 by-election, they had 221. They lost by 154 votes in that particular polling station. Akropong JSS, MPP, 325. In the 2010 by-election, 225. They lost by a whopping 100 votes. Last one, Pamin JSS, 2008, 517. 2010 by-election, they lost by 151 votes. This is their stronghold. This is a party that sees their fortunes dwindling day after day as a result of the monumental achievements of President Mills's administration. Talk about the eradication of schools under trees. Talk about the distribution of over 3,000 laptops by the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology, 6,000 more to come, 10,000 jobs just under the Eco Brigade project, and all that. They are very much aware, so they want to shift the goalpost from us discussing the issues and just shifting them to pranks, concoctions. Baba Jamal has done this. I just want to put one question to anybody who says that he believes that voice is that of Baba Jamal. Can that person look at God straight in the face and say that that voice is that of Baba Jamal?